You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for our wrap-up of day one of the fifth test between India and England. It was a day that started pretty well for England and ended spectacularly badly for England. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-Brown. How are you doing, Max?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good. Obviously, not such a great day of cricket for England fans, but still plenty to chew through. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, we have got a lot to talk about. We've got Zak Crawley doing some Zak Crawley stuff. We've got Kuldeep doing some Kuldeep stuff, and we've got Jaiswal doing some Jaiswal stuff, as well as some other people doing some other stuff. Before we get to all of that, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the Cricket Podcast wherever you are listening or watching. We're only 4 subscribers away from 15,000 on YouTube.
Oh, so, nice! I mean, it was we were a couple of hundred away not long ago, so that's good progress.
Let's tick that off before the end of this video. So 4 people, head over to the YouTube screen that you're on, click the subscribe button.
And milestones. So why not have our own?
Yeah, I want to see us go back up the iTunes chart. Or Apple chart. We don't really talk about Apple because I hate Apple, which isn't a good way to get people who are listening on an Apple device to click follow. But this is a targeted message at you. Get your Apple phones out, your overpriced Apple phone out, or your overpriced Apple tablet out. And on Apple Podcasts, click subscribe. There you go. Sorry for insulting you. Max, what happened in the cricket?
So glad you asked, Jack. We were obviously in Dharamsala, the beautiful vistas of the Himalayas in the background, a lovely place to play cricket. And England batted first, and they got off to a solid start. They reached base camp in double quick time as Crawley and Duckett strode forward once more. England were 100 for 1 in good conditions. Everything was looking up. However, altitude sickness soon set in, and in peak England style, the middle order collapsed like a set of densely packed snow atop an underlying weak snow layer, and an avalanche of wickets commenced in the face of India's spin attack. 100 for 1, 175 for 3, 218 all out. Kind of tells its own story. And made sure that the baseball haters won't ever rest. In reply, India never looked back. Aside from Jaiswal inexplicably throwing his nailed-on century off the top of K2, it was a pretty faultless display from Rohit, Jaiswal, and Shubman Gill at the end. And sorry to say, England really do have a mountain to climb.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty spectacular collapse. To be honest, 100 for 1 just before lunch. Even if you take it from a little bit after that, but 100 for 1 just before lunch to being 80 ahead at the end of the day is, that's pretty spectacular. Something's gone badly wrong.
Still ahead, I suppose. Still winning technically.
That's true. That is true. If the match ended now, it would be a victory for England. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Maybe you could take it from that. Maybe there's a silver lining. They're not actually losing yet. So that was pretty bad. But the spectacular collapse is probably the 5 wickets for 8 runs that happens in the afternoon session. We should probably start there with Kuldeep Yadav terrorizing England's batters, shouldn't we, Max? Because that's the hinge point of the day.
It really is. It really is. And it's obviously you have to. I think there's been a real issue with this in this series of particularly the English media, has to be said, not giving anywhere near enough credit to India for beating England, because India have been really good with a side that is missing quite a few, of their normal players. Their replacements haven't been particularly bad, have they? But there's been a lot of what England have thrown away. What? Kohli?
Missing. Kohli is, they are missing Kohli.
King Legend. Jadeja was out for a test.
Absolutely no way is King Legend getting in this team.
Not anymore, but he'd have been there at the start. Anyway, the point is, there's a lot been made about what England have thrown away and how England have not, they've basically given up positions, and not enough about how good India have been. But I might be falling into that trap today with Kuldeep, because Kuldeep bowled beautifully, bowled really well, got something out of the pitch that a lot of that others hadn't managed to get out at that point because it was quite a nice batting surface. But my God, it was like England just went out with blindfolds on, wasn't it? Like eyes closed. They didn't know what was going on. Like, apart from the Zak Crawley delivery, which was a really good ball, dip, fizz, great turn. You've got like Johnny Bairstow, Ben Stokes, Ollie Pope. None of them had a clue what was going on. Like
Yes.
practice. I don't know. Watch video clips of the ball coming out the hand. Like you can pick Kuldeep Yadav. He's not got a googly that is unnoticeable. It was just a bit odd, I thought.
I don't know. I reckon it's probably harder to do than you think.
Oh, it's probably harder.
Pick a googly.
Probably.
And there's
but these are elite batters.
Yeah, but even at that level, I think like the way that they pick up the ball out of the hand is probably different for different players. So it's not. I don't think it's as simple as saying watch the hand. It's really different because that isn't how a lot of them will be as good as they are. They'll be picking up on other things. So, for example, there might be players in this England team that would pick a googly by looking for the revolutions on the ball. There might be players that pick a googly by seeing whether it comes up out of the hand like a googly does, because obviously you sort of have to cast it slightly to pick the ball. They might not be looking at the hand, and there will be others that look at the hand. And those three different ways, let's say, of picking a wrong un, maybe more or less effective with different bowlers. And I think some credit has to go to Kuldeep Yadav.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. He bowled really well.
And I think he's done it. I think there's probably more planning from the England batters than you're giving them credit for here, and consequently less credit that's going to Kuldeep for picking up the 5 wickets. So Ollie Pope, like it looks pretty bad, and it looks sort of doubly bad because like the literally the ball before Dhruv Jurel says he's about to come running down the wicket, so bowl him a wrong and basically paraphrasing slightly. But Ollie Pope's not doing that because he is a simpleton. He's doing that because he's made an educated decision that will be a more effective way of playing Kuldeep Yadav. And Kuldeep Yadav
wasn't particularly educated.
Well, no, but Kuldeep Yadav has to have some credit for figuring it out, and so does Jurel for knowing that was about to happen and for bowling the absolutely ideal ball. Ben Duckett out slogging, and was Bairstow out sweeping again? I think he was, wasn't he? Yeah. So maybe there's a little bit of. I'll get to Bairstow in a minute. In a minute, because I've got some things to say on Bairstow. But let's go to Stokes, who's the other one that gets a big wrong un that makes him look stupid. Ben Stokes, for whatever reason, has decided, and it's a really clear game plan in this Test series, that he's going to play way more off the back foot than you would expect him to, and probably more off the back foot than his natural game. I would say that that's had mixed success. He's been out unluckily a few times. The balls are kept low, and he's got a few runs in some of the tests. Today it looked particularly ugly because of the fact that he completely missed a wrong un, and he's beautifully set up as well by Kuldeep, isn't he? Who bowls him 5 good leg spinners and then the one that goes the other way. But like if you're looking at what Stokes is doing there, he's obviously thinking about how he's going to approach spin, and we have to give Stokes some credit here. Like he's a guy who's played a lot of Test cricket, scored thousands and thousands of Test runs. There must be a process here that kind of works for Stokes. Now, could it be improved upon? Yeah, maybe, but I think there is a plan there. And again, I think what's actually happened is that Kuldeep Yadav has outbowled Stokes' plan. Bairstow, I think you're probably right. Like, I don't know if you read the Mark Ramprakash column this week.
I didn't. No.
The Guardian.
Do you want to catch me up?
So it was like it was a conversation piece, an opinion piece about Bairstow and how he might be a little bit underappreciated. And we said some similar things on our preview podcast.
He obviously listens, big fan.
Yeah, where we were going through the numbers, and for a guy who's played more tests as a wicketkeeper than as a batter, he's actually got pretty good numbers. I think it's the 12th most runs by a wicketkeeper batter, or in the matches that he's wicket kept ever in Test cricket. So it's actually a good player. But Ramprakash was talking about his time as an England coach and how Bairstow was effectively uncoachable. He'd just do what Bairstow thought Bairstow would be able to do. And I think you kind of see that to some extent. Well, to some extent, like if you've got eyes, you can see that in this series. Like Bairstow's method, probably isn't bringing him the number of runs that the quality of batter that Bairstow is should be bringing him, because he's doing things that are really quite low percentage, sweeping off the stumps over and over and over again. Like we were talking on the preview again about that period where he just kept being bowled. Anyone who could bowl on the stumps, he was just out. And Ramprakash was sort of talking about this time. I think that sort of overlapped with when Bairstow was when Ramprakash was the coach. And he'd say how in team meetings they talk about in swing and how the team would be bowlers who bowled in swing, and how the rest of the team would be talking about how they were going to get more over to the offside to get their head over the ball, to play it through the leg side and play with the swing. Whereas Bairstow would sit in the meeting and be like, no, I'm good enough to hit it through the offside, despite the fact that he was being bowled over and over and over again. So I don't know, Max. Like I'm rejecting part of your thesis. But I do appreciate that in some of these circumstances there is evidence that suggests that actually, there's just some brainless batting that's happened here.
I think Ollie Pope was pretty brainless, because I don't know what he was trying to achieve with the shot he's played. See, it was premeditated, and like there was, we talk about in T20 cricket. I mean, talking about like the risk reward and like some of the ways people get out trying to hit a single, and you're like, what are you trying to achieve at this point? And that's what I was confused about with the sort of Ollie Pope shot. I was like, what's your goal here? It's just before lunch, and you're like coming down the wicket to try and nurdle one into the leg side, and it's just like, and it wasn't the right line. Kuldeep saw him coming and got one over on him, and it just made him look a bit stupid. But I mean, I take your point. I mean, I wasn't giving enough credit to Kuldeep. That I will agree with, because he did bowl beautifully. And I think it's a wider thing about India as a team. Like England got through a pretty tricky period where the ball was sort of swinging and moving around a bit. They got past that, and they got into the point of the game where normally you'd expect right now it will be easier to bat and we can cash in on this great start we've got. And that's something that should potentially have happened in a lot of games in this series, and it hasn't happened. And part of the reason for that is just because of how relentless this India side is, because you move from facing Bumrah and Siraj, and there isn't a let up, because you're then playing against probably the best off spinner in the world in those conditions, with all the variations that he's got. You've got Kuldeep Yadav, who can bowl you a magic delivery and has got a really good wrong one that you have to be looking out for. And you've got Jadeja, who's just relentlessly accurate, and you have to be so switched on and concentrated throughout the entire innings. There's no point where you can maybe relax a bit and things come a bit easier. You have to be so focused throughout the entire innings when you're playing against India in India. And I think that's where England have fallen down a bit. They've got past that good bit and haven't kicked on because it's just so hard to do. And India are probably the better side. So that's part of the parcel.
I think that's true. I wouldn't make any mistake about it, though. I don't think that England have played well. I think even though you're right about the relentlessness of the India attack, I do think that Joe Root probably should have cashed in more. I think Bairstow has been quite lucky to play all 5 tests, and the fact that Harry Brook isn't available probably explains that. Ben Stokes, we've talked about him, been unlucky a couple of times, but also really hasn't played a statement innings.
But he's also coming back from knee surgery, and we've all immediately forgotten about that because of how fit he looks. But that has to.
But he is in the middle order, and these are the 3 guys that sort of haven't really done anything. I mean, Ollie Pope won a Test match by himself, and then has been pretty much a car crash. Ever since. But the credit in the bank from the Test match probably lets him off. The Test match that he won probably lets him off a little bit. And Ben Stokes is kind of has a slightly mystifying approach to batting with the tail. I think it's fair to say. Yeah, so I don't think they've been great. I mean, like you are right. I mean, if you look at how India play as well, or where India's strength lies, or particularly on these types of wickets, it is actually after the new ball that their players come into their own. So it does. The shape of England's innings does kind of make sense if you take into consideration the strengths and relative weaknesses of the India bowling lineup. Even if we take, and we were talking about Jaiswal Bumrah on the preview show, about how he's not, if you rank Jaiswal Bumrah through different phases of a test match, he probably wouldn't be someone you would throw a new ball to. I mean, he'd be up there, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Jaiswal Bumrah is not a good new ball bowler, but I'm saying that there are probably other bowlers in the world that are better than him with a brand new ball. Give him a ball that's a little bit older, maybe reverse swinging, and he's basically unstoppable.
Yeah, no one compares.
You can probably say the same for the Indian spinners as well on these surfaces. When it's a little bit more, when we've got a little bit more square turn, then the shininess of the new ball really brings them into the game. But on these pitches, I think around the 30 over mark is when we've really seen them excel. And the cleverness and that strangulation that they're able to exert on an innings really comes to the fore. So I think it does kind of make sense why England's middle order has failed. But even having said that, they've had the best possible starts. I think 7 out of 9 times England have got to 50 without losing a wicket. Even if you know you're coming up against Bumrah and Ashwin and Kuldeep, all in form, maybe the 3 top bowlers for that phase in a test match, you'd like to think you'd have got runs more than once.
They have underperformed. You can't shy away from that. But I think sort of the wider point is that, like, in these conditions, these players, to be able to compete, would have had to play probably above their expected level in these conditions to be able to compete because of how good India are, which is hard to do. So even if you'd got maybe an expected return from all of them, it doesn't. It still would have been pretty difficult for England. The fact that they've been below par makes it even more stark, I suppose, the gulf. But
cool.
Where we are.
Right. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back with part 2, talking about, I don't know, I guess the end of the England innings and what happened when India batted. So see you in 2 seconds.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, where I'm happy to say, Max, that we have just passed the 15,000 subscriber mark, which is great. I'm going to read a super chat out from the YouTube live chat from Girish. England does not have any excuses today. It's not the pitch, not Bazball. It's just daft cricket. And when England got off to a great start, I knew this was coming, or I knew what was coming later in the day. And I think that's probably true as well. So I think if we talk about, I guess the tail end of the innings, Max. I think Rohit Sharma has said something very similar to what Girish has said there. It's like even when England do get off to a good start, you know that they're going to do something dumb, or you know that Bumrah and Ashwin and Kuldeep are going to come back into the game at some point. And it was a painfully familiar pattern, wasn't it? It has been a painfully familiar pattern if you're an England fan over the last 4 matches.
It has. I mean, is that part and parcel of the way England play cricket, right? I mean, their whole brand of being attacking is to make the game exciting, make positive results, as in not draws, more likely, and to do things that are riskier, but the potential benefit is huge. But that means, as an opposition side, you always feel like, for a bit, and until it's fully gone, you always feel like you might be in the game. And that's a really, really interesting sort of like balance to the whole England approach that they have. And I think that's where it's a way of playing to try and level things out when perhaps the other team are more skilled than you. If you make it more high variance, then you got more of a chance of pulling off the unexpected. But when the gulf is too big, you're always in a point where the opposition are just they don't feel threatened. I suppose, if you see what I mean, like exactly what Rohit was saying. Like even when if India are 100 for 1 and England are bowling, they're like, oh god. And when India are there, they're like, it'll be fine. But again, that comes back to just how good India's spinners are. Like the difference between England with their pacers not taking wickets and India being 100 for 1, and England being 100 for 1, but not having yet dealt with Ashwin and Kuldeep and Jadeja. It's two completely different scenarios.
Yeah, it is. Max, talking about India being 100 for 1, it was another masterclass from Jaiswal, wasn't it? It's actually quite a brief stay by his standards in this series. Another 50 for him. Took Bashir down for 18 off 1 over, and it's hard to think of a better batter in world cricket at the moment, isn't it? I mean, like he's gone from the prodigal son to the best player in the world, confirmed.
Prodigal dad.
Prodigal dad, yeah. In these 5 tests. I don't know. He's good.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, was it 1,000 runs up now? Super quick time. 700 for the series, is it? Or approaching? It's more runs than in a series than any Indian against England. Obviously, some of that is tempered by the fact that it's 5 tests, and that's not historically been the case. But that's not to take away from the achievement, because he's outdone Kohli, he's outdone Rahul Dravid in that respect, and that's how good he has been in this series. It has been. I think were there 2 failures like from Jaiswal? I think maybe twice in like this. The second and third test where England had nicked him off early, but apart from that, he's just thrown everything back at England, and again, like Ben Duckett has got a lot to answer for the way he taught Jaiswal to open the batting. It's been stunning. I'm excited to see what's next, because obviously, I mean, this is one thing, right? Doing it at home is one thing. It's going to be really interesting to see how he fares in Australia. I mean, that's coming up, isn't it, for India in the next year or so? So that'll be really interesting, because that's, obviously a completely different ball game, better bowling attack, bouncier pitches, faster wickets. So it'll be interesting to see how his skill set compares. But at the moment, it seems like he can do absolutely everything. So I'm hopeful that won't prove too much of a challenge for him, and really excited to see what's next for Jaiswal. Could be a one in a generation talent kind of thing.
Probably the IPL and about 800 runs.
Yeah,
striking at 160, I would guess.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, actually, that we'll be moving on to our IPL coverage, and the speed at which this game's moving along might mean that we're
sooner rather than later.
Some of that on Sunday, yeah.
Yeah.
It's cheers, India. We were looking at our schedule. And we were thinking, it's going to be quite tight to get 10 team previews.
Yeah, very thoughtful
predictions, etc., sorted in the next 13 days. But with a test match thrown in, but it looks like that test match could be wrapping up fairly soon. Max, I mean, if we do cast our minds forward, Rohit's still at the crease, 50 unbeaten. Shubman Gill hit the last ball of the day for a colossal 6. I mean, it's hard to really see a route back into the game for England. Like they're quite toothless. I mean, as much as the commentators want to talk up Shoaib Bashir and Tom Hartley, like you're looking at them and you're thinking, there's just no way that they're going to run through a team here. Like they might be able to manufacture wickets over a long enough period of time, but it's not happening. You can't con me. I can see in front of my eyes that this is easy for the batters. I don't know. Am I wrong? Is there a way back?
I mean, a blizzard. I don't know. some crazy snowstorm that does something very odd to the pitch, but only when India are batting, and then is fine again by the time England come out to have another go. I can't see a route back. I can't see India even having to bat twice in this game. I think it will be stick up 500 and a valiant 270 all out in the third innings is where I'd be putting my money on this one. England probably. I don't know. With the selection, they stuck with the two seamers, and Mark Wood opening the bowling doesn't really give you what you need from Mark Wood. And as soon as England didn't get early wickets with the new ball, it was always going to be a struggle because, like you said, it was a good deck. Not really a lot of turn for the finger spinners to extract. England maybe would have benefited from having Ray and Ahmed around. It might have been a point of difference, but even that, you're comparing Ray and Ahmed to Kuldeep, they're not even, they're not on the same level. So it's just Bashir and Hartley have done well, right? They've done a good job for England, considering the fact that they've never played Test cricket before, and they've been decent. They've been fairly controlled. They bowled quite well, but them bowling well doesn't mean that they're going to cause problems for some of the best batters in India that you're gonna see. So I think there's a lot of hype, just possibly because we all feared the worst and it didn't happen. It's just a expectation, isn't it?
There's part of that. England have played well in parts of all of the first four tests. They haven't really played very well in this one, I would say, but they played well in.
They played well for a bit this morning.
Zak Crawley played well. Zak Crawley has been pretty good for a year now, which is it's kind of
first name on the team sheet.
But I don't know if the team have played well in this test. The other ones, I think so, but it's still quite relative to England, them playing well. Like England have competed better than I think lots of people thought they would, better than I thought they would. But they've still ended up being absolutely flattened in 3 of the 4 matches based on the kind of actual eventual scoreline. Maybe two of the 4 with one fairly big win thrown in as well. Max, we've got a couple of questions, and then if there's anything in the chat that we want to get to, you're in charge of that. Regista says the openers have gone after the bowling and the middle order just haven't been able to get into the innings other than the route 100. Why has the England middle order consistently failed to deliver? I think we've sort of covered that. I think it's probably one of those combination things. It's not been a legendary series for any of those guys, and that's the period of the game that India are best at. So you've got the world's or one of the world's best home bowling attacks, bowling in the period when they're at their best against some players that have maybe been a bit unlucky here and there, maybe come in with some game plans that don't really work, maybe a combination of that. If you actually look at Bairstow's numbers for the series, he's been out an awful lot more than you would expect him to be. So if you look at how many false shots he's played, not actually that many, but he's just getting out all the time. So there's probably a little bit of bad luck in there for him. But also, as we were saying earlier, the game plan isn't rock solid. It probably brings in the possibility of him being out. Route today, you could say, was maybe a bit unlucky. He faces one ball that spins away. The ball lands on the exact same spot and goes straight on. It wasn't like an arm ball or something like that. It just didn't spin. It drifted. It had sideways movement on the ball. It drifted. It's a really good piece of bowling from Jadeja, but it doesn't spin. It's hard. You need an element of luck, basically, in those scenarios if you're a batter. And he didn't get it, so he's out. Shivam says, do you think England needs to reconsider its Bazball approach regarding the conditions they are playing in? Because it seems like Bazball is taking too much of a toll on the English players' minds. It's just as if they're trying to match the hype of Bazball instead of playing actual Test cricket. I don't really think so. I think they're probably playing about the limit of their ability, with the exception maybe of the middle order where they've been a little bit below par. But India are just better than them. This is what happens in Test cricket. A lot of the natural variance that you would get in a short form game doesn't exist in Test cricket. If this was a succession,
that's the point of Test cricket.
Well, this was a succession of one days, and we were just looking at the first innings. The it would be different, wouldn't it? But it doesn't work like that. So I think India are basically just a bit better than them. Anything from the chat?
I think there's a bit of stuff that we've mostly covered. One question from a lot of Lions, which was, how glad are you that England didn't go with 3 seamers? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I think England's best chance is still on this pitch is probably seam bowling. But I understand that Robinson was sick, so was unselectable. They've obviously decided they didn't want to double up on like the express pace guys and have Atkinson and Wood, which is sort of understandable. And as we were saying on the preview show, they might just want to have an extra look at Sher Bashir and Tom Hartley because they might not be playing for another year or 9 months whenever they go to Pakistan. So maybe they just want to see a little bit more from those. So it kind of makes sense.
I actually would have preferred 3 seamers, I think, to be honest.
I don't think
it was really serviceable.
I think it probably would have worked better for England. I mean, like although on the India side, as predicted, by the way, Bumrah was a little bit less effective than I thought he'd be, despite bowling some pretty good balls. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that, but England basically don't have Kuldeep Yadav, and that's the problem. Or Ashwin.
It's an issue. Yeah, we need to sort that. We need to sort that citizenship.
If they had that, then it would be closer. But they don't. So, on that highly insightful piece of analysis, Max, we should probably wrap up the podcast. Final reminder, get your phone out your pocket and click follow on Apple and Spotify and elsewhere and leave a review. We've got a bunch of reviews that have come in. I think somewhere in the ballpark of 500 reviews on Spotify. It'd be good if we could get another few there and some more on Apple as well. That seems to be the way. We don't really know this. That seems to be the way that the algorithm decides who it will show your podcast to. And that ultimately is the business, isn't it?
It's all about the algorithm.
It's trying to trick a computer into thinking you're popular. Well, the alternative would be to become Michael Vaughan and just say loads of fucking dumb stuff to get a reaction. That's the other way to trick the algorithm.
Should we give it a go for a month, see what happens? See if anyone listens to us anymore.
We need to get Ross back on. LM10 says you look very sexy, Max, and that's a good way to end the podcast.
Thank you, LM10.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about how many runs India get. Bye bye.